Michael Kitces.
David Carl Richards III,
That's right. That's
right?
right.
DCR3. I keep
Yeah,
wanting to say DCF
yeah.
because I love my discounted cash flow. So I have to come back to you're not the spreadsheet, you're the you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
DCR, not
I
DCF.
would like to be formally. That's how I'd like to be addressed from now on. At all FPA events, as if I'm a speaker, I'd like you to come up afterwards and say,
DCR3,
no, David Carl
DCF.
Richards the third. This David
Dave,
Carl Richards the third.
Dave
Yes,
Carl.
that's
So we
right.
have to say the whole thing out, not like
Yeah, the whole thing. Yep,
not the Star
every
Wars
time.
acronym.
Every time.
Okay.
I've worked 50 years to get rid of that, so it's funny that it's coming back. Um, so listen, we had this fun chat earlier today on the day that we're recording. We had one of the monthly workshops we do at the Society of Advice, and I have a guest. 10 out of 12 months I have a guest, and today we had you.
Yay.
And the team prepared this bio. I mentioned it on the call. It was like 4.5 pages long, so I only read a little bit of it, but because we figured everybody knew you. But we got in this really fascinating discussion that I think would be helpful here around. I mean, we were talking about hiring, but I think it's even easier just to think about it around delegation. So whether you're delegating to a contract worker or an outsourced person or somebody you hire, because the thing I notice among a lot of advisors, this is certainly true for me, is I have some things I really want to do, and often I don't have enough time. And so the first thing I do is make a list of things that I want to stop doing. I call it my stop doing list. I'm sure that was maybe a Dan Sullivan thing or something. The stop doing list. And then I think, okay, what can I delete? That's where I start. Like, what can I delete? Just get rid of, like, boom, done. Hey, you know what? Let's just stop doing it.
Okay. It's very
And then
getting things
there's,
done. Okay.
yeah, there's still like there may be things that I'm doing that literally don't need to be done anymore. So then I move out once I get rid of all the things I could delete, and this is a never-ending process, right? Once I get rid of the things I could just delete and stop doing, I move up to these things that we could automate, and there may be some things you can automate. And then there's a pile of things still left. And some of them I have to do, but before I start doing them, I want to see what I could delegate. So uh, delete, automate, delegate. And when we get to delegate, we run into, there's this whole thing that happens. Like the how-to, the tactical piece, we can certainly talk about a little bit,
Mhm.
but it's, as in all things, it's relatively simple, not to be confused with easy. Like there's some pretty simple things you could do to delegate. The reason delegation feels hard to me, and it came up in today's call, is there's some feelings around it. And I wanted
Feeling.
to, yeah, feelings. And you are the king of feelings. So I wanted to talk
Clearly.
today
Clearly.
about your feelings and what feelings you've noticed as you've delegated, and then what feelings you've noticed as, like, what stands in the way. Okay, set
Yeah.
aside tactics just for a minute. Let's pretend like we know how to do it
hmm
and we're still not doing it. What are the things that stand in the way? What are the things that got in your way?
So, well, so I mean, you comment, pretend that we know how to do it. I do think there is an aspect for a lot of us that we really we don't know how to
Right.
do it, like not well, not in the way that really like helps a person actually understand what do they need to do it and how do they do it to your standards and your expectations, and how do you make sure that they're getting it done well, which leads to a lot of woes around delegation that come back to some version of they can't do it as well as I do. They'll never be able to do it as well as I do.
Mm.
I can
Mm.
just do it faster myself than taking the time to teach someone else to
Mm.
do it. Like I see a lot crop up there that maybe um we can come back to in a moment. Getting more directly to your question though about my journey through this, for me it was not that. I had
Mm.
some challenge with that later because I really had never learned how to like actually delegate and what to do. So I had to learn that. But uh when I was getting going in the industry in the 2000s, I feel like it was sort of the first wave of advisory firms beginning to scale recurring revenue models where we weren't just all out there selling all the time, right? Because like that treadmill race never ends. We were starting to build advisory firms. We had these recurring revenue assets, our management models. At some point, you wake up on January 1st and you got a decent amount of revenue, and like you could hire someone in the business to do things for you, like to delegate to, so you can go out there and do more and grow the business and be your awesome self. And there was this kind of mantra that started showing up in the mid to late 2000s that was something the effect of just spend all your time on your highest and best use and delegate and let go of the rest, right? And like I folks like Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, have taught this for a very long time as well. But I feel like it was really coming into the broad like advisor domain that this was the thing. And so
It wasn't that. Let me just quickly. That was also largely around like, and I remember John Bowen's working on this, like client facing activities.
Yeah, I mean, nominally, the implied your highest and best use is going out and growing the business and getting more clients, or maybe it's serving the clients and being awesome for them and let go of the administrative work, but all built around like there's definitely some things that you do on the list of things that you do every day as a solo that you probably should not be doing. They are not your highest and best use of your time. And so the practical advice at that point was usually something to the effect of, so sit down, make a list of all the things you do all day, all week long. Figure out which ones you really don't like doing and don't want to do. And that list of all the things that you can't stand and want to get rid of is now the job description for your first employee. And now, by definition, they're doing all the things that you wanted to get rid of, and you're doing more things that are in your higher and best use.
Yeah.
And at a basic level, I actually think it's very sound advice for someone that's trying to figure out their first hire, their first full-time hire, even their first part-time hire. Like, what do you delegate? What do you delegate? Well, just make a list of all the things, and whatever it is that feels soul-sucking and drains your energy, like, there you go. That's what you let go of first. And the challenge I had with this framework around practice management advice, right, you were kind of asking around like mindset issues and blocking points. I wasn't stuck on the end of, well, if I give it to them, are they going to do it as well as I can, or it takes too much time? I was stuck in a very different version of it, which is, so I'm making a list of all the things that I think are terrible things to do, and I'm making it someone else's job to do those things.
Right.
That sounds like something a terrible person would do, right? Like, who makes a list of things that suck and say, your problem now, welcome to the company? Like,
right.
I can joke about it now in retrospect.
Yeah.
But I mean, I felt this very viscerally real time. Like, it felt awful to say, I've got a great idea. Let's hire someone and make them do all the things that I hate to do.
Yeah.
And it stopped me for years, literally years, from hiring, from expanding the team, from delegating in any material way, because I just didn't want to be like my mental script version of a terrible person who thinks up things that they don't like doing and then makes someone else do it.
Yeah. You just felt guilty.
Guilty, like bad about myself as a person. Like, I mean, it was a really negative thought cycle. I mean, like, even guilt is probably too generous. I'm like, if the world ever found out that I made a list of things that I hate doing and made someone else do it, like, my reputation would be destroyed. Like, what guilt was too mild. I'm like, this is like reputational risk.
Right.
I'm like one of those.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like putting in air quotes for anybody who's listening. Like, I'm one of those people that makes a list of terrible things and then makes it someone else's problem.
Well, what did you do to fix that? How did that change?
What changed for me was the I guess like the realization in the truest sense, like, so it turns out not everyone's like me, and some people are wired a little bit differently.
Turns out.
And it turns out that there's a list of things that I think are absolutely terrible to do that other people actually like and feel like they had a good day when they do it. You know, it was very draining for me to get through our billing process
Hmm.
and all the invoicing and all the billing, and then check back and make sure all the checks cleared and monitor the accounts
Yes.
receivable. And it turns out there's people who like keeping books and do invoicing. Like they come in, they got a list of things to do, they check them off, they feel awesome at the end of the day that all the things checked off and the books balance and the numbers are all clean and foot to the penny. And then they go home really happy at the end of the day because that was what they enjoyed doing. And then they
Yeah.
live their lives and do whatever they're doing at home. And like this, hey, there's this whole thing around billing and invoicing that was such a drag for me. And I don't have to feel guilty about delegating it. Now, I do if I find someone who doesn't like bookkeeping, because then I'm really like dumping my stuff on them. But if I
Yeah.
go find a person who actually likes bookkeeping, like this is just kind of a gift. Like, how would you like to do books things that you already like doing, but I'll pay you for it? Would that be cool?
Right. It's really it's so interesting to I think this is a more common story in our heads than we think. Like it sounds pretty simple when you hear it talked about like this. Like, yeah, of course there are people who like to do things. There are people who like to do things differently than I do. But I think it takes a while to figure that out. It was interesting. One of the people in the Society of Advice workshop we did today, Ian, said that and I can't remember his exact example, but he had somebody who told him like, hey, I love doing that. Like that thing that you don't like, I love doing that. And in fact, she went on to say, in fact, I was kind of worried that you might be getting ready to get rid of me because you weren't giving me that thing, you know? And I think
Because she
to
just
me
wanted
that
to do things and like, please give me things to do. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm respected as an employee because you're not giving me things to do.
yeah, and I can clearly see that you don't enjoy that. I actually quite like it, right? And I remember I had that exact same experience around brainstorming. I thought everybody loved to brainstorm.
Oh, yeah. Right there.
I can't imagine. It was actually when I first got told this was, somebody who was working with me. She'd been working with me for 2 years, incredibly important part of the business. And she said to me after 2 years once, like, because this used to be like almost every phone call. It'd be like, oh, okay, well, what about this? And let's think about this. And I thought it was great. I thought I was including her in the process. I thought I was doing all the things I'd read about the book. I thought all that. And she finally came to me and said, when you do that, it really causes me a lot of anxiety because I don't like it at all. Because the whole time I'm literally thinking, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Like she's trying to get it
She's
to
trying to figure out what
action.
to do, and you're like spinning in a new direction every 30 seconds to do a different thing.
We're just wondering right now. They don't do anything, right? Like it was fascinating to me. So it really changed. It's like, wow, there are people who don't like that. And the last story I'll tell about this is I had an executive assistant at the office once that went to get food for lunch for clients. And when she came back, there were no drinks. And I remember saying, hey, what about the drinks? And she said, nobody asked for drinks. And I remember being annoyed at first, like, and then I realized, wait, she was 100 so good at checklists. She didn't want to make the checklist. She didn't want to think about whether there
Yep.
was a way to improve the checklist. That's a different skill. She was really, really good at making checklists, which, if you have lots of ideas and nobody likes to get anything done, I don't know if you know this, but that's a bad business model. So those people who like to get things done are actually insanely valuable. It's not like one is more
Yes.
important than the other. So I just think that idea of like, wait, there are things that other people love to do. So that's how you
But
got over the idea that like you were feeling a little bad about piling
but
your garbage on somebody else.
so yes, but I want to stay in that example for a moment because I think there's a real power to that example in the context that you just gave, right? Because when I think about how most people that I know would respond to that situation, they're like, I gotta hire someone who thinks more for themselves.
Right.
How could you not realize that?
Right.
I need someone who's more motivated. I need someone who cares more about the success of our firm, that they would be conscientious enough to realize that our clients need drinks and not just the food. Like,
Right, right, totally.
right. Young people these days, don't they get it? You have
Yeah.
drink with food. Come on. Right. And like all the different ways that we can get negative on the person.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
proves me right that you just can't hire good talent these days.
Yeah. Can you believe it? She
And
didn't even bring drinks.
instead of your version of how I framed it, and I sort of appreciate like the way you kind of owned it to say, if I hired a person who's really good at getting things done, it's on me to tell them the things that need to get done.
Yeah.
Like, if I
Yeah.
want a
Well,
good getting things done person, here's the deal. They'll get all the things done. And my commitment is I will remember to ask for food and drink.
yeah.
I got to do a little more work to ask for the food and drink. The good news is I don't have to do anything after that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're going to
Yeah.
go out there and get stuff done. But like, that's part of the trading equation here. Because if you want someone who thinks of all that stuff as well, they're going to have ideas of their own. And if they have
Yeah.
ideas of their own, then you're going to have the other problem, which is, well, I really
Yeah.
wish you would just do it my way.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was going to say is I could tell you another story about saying that. Like I asked somebody to do something, I came back and they did it a completely different way. And I was like, couldn't you just do it? So I love the idea. And a lot of this for me came from the understanding the Colby index.
Mhm.
Like that person, I can remember her name, her Colby score was like, she had like a 9 on what's called follow through, the blue. And
Yep.
she had very, very low on the red, which is called fact find. So she didn't get
She
a
won't seek out
task
the information of what she needs, but she is going to do what's on
to
her
it,
list.
which I think is awesome. And I think one of the reasons we're more prone to just complain about it is it shifts a little bit of the burden to like it's fun to have more places to hide if things get done wrong. It's a little bit harder to hide if the idea is like, look, I don't need you to make strategy. I need you to implement it.
Mm-hmm.
I will
But
get you stuff. And you, by the way, you love
yep,
implementing. Somebody who wants to make strategy,
yep.
that's not the right place for them. They'll be unhappy.
But again, I think there's a corollary that goes with this, which is right. If you want the getting things done person, you do have to accept that it's on you to
To
give them
communicate
a
clearly.
list of
Yeah.
things to do. And
Yeah.
if you want someone who's going to help you figure out the list of things to do, that's okay.
Yep.
But they're going to come with their ideas, which means you have to be ready to compromise and work with them on the shared ideas. You don't get to
Right.
say like, well, I want you to uh
Have
come with
ideas, but
your own
only like
ideas,
mine.
but only when they're the same as my idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried
Yeah.
dunk anyone, but like that's a version of how I show that shows
Totally.
up. I mean, that is problematic. Like either you want to do this more collaboratively, you want someone who thinks of their own stuff and you're ready to work with them to compromise around it, or you want your things your way, which is totally fine, but then it is on your shoulders to just be clear in expressing what you want every time the way that you want it. And you know, if you've got a good checklist person, then the food pickup checklist just has an addition to the checklist that says
Yeah.
ask about drink order. And now
Yeah.
every single time they're going to come back and say, "Oh, I was about to go get the food. Did you want drinks with that?" Because you put it on their checklist, they're going to faithfully do the
Yeah.
checklist. But
Yeah. It's totally
that's
true.
on you to say, okay, if I want a person who does the things that I ask them to do, that's fine. But then you have to own that you've got to make the list of what the things are that you want and just practice how clear you can be about expressing those. And if someone doesn't get it right the first time, at least improve the process so they'll get it right the next time. Oh, you forgot the drinks. Well, let's change the checklist to say ask for a
Yeah.
drink order, and this problem will never happen again.
Yeah, exactly. I love that idea of like, okay, well, if there's a mistake, rather than thinking like that person didn't do it right, think what was it about my action? How, in what way was I complicit in this result?
Mhm.
Oh, well, I didn't ask for drinks. Oh, okay, well, we can fix that. Let's put it on the list. And I think the biggest mistake I've ever made in delegation and the teeny bit of hiring, but it's mainly delegating, is delegating to outsourced or projects. Is the second version of that you pointed to, which was the person where you just say, I don't know exactly what I want you to do, just come in and figure it out. Well, there are people who are really good at that.
Mhm.
And there are other people who are like the checklist person,
Mhm.
you know. So I think just figuring out what is it that you're solving for, and are you
Yes.
getting the right kind of person? And I think in job descriptions, this came up today in the workshop. I think, and I remember seeing Ramit Sethi do this really, really well in his job descriptions. he would say things like, "Are you the kind of person?" You know, like he would use those words. Are you the kind of person who just loves having a checklist in front of them and then check? And where we started with this was it's hard for those of us, it's hard for some of us if you're not that kind of person. It's hard for you to believe that there are people reading that going, "Oh my gosh, yes." Right? Like I love just checking things off at the end of the day, or I love organizing files, or I love taking all of like I can't imagine going into the Airtable database that we've built for all my content. It's got like 8,000 pieces of data in it now. Every single video, every single sketch, every single column, every single thing is organized in there. I can't imagine going in there to find a piece of gold because there's a lot of garbage in there, but there's hopefully some gold. I can't, who should do that? Well, not me, but guess what? There's somebody like a librarian who would love to go in there in a catalog place with the windows closed. And so I just think that where we started here was there are people who love stuff that you don't like.
What, and the extension I would give that relative to particularly how I see this show up in the industry, like if you're looking for someone that likes the things that you don't like, right? That'll take the things that you want to let go of and actually come to that excitedly and positively. You know, the one place you won't find that is hiring mini me,
Mm.
which I find is the number one hire that most advisory firms try to make first. I just need someone to help out with the things that I do. I basically want like me 5, 10, 20 years ago, depending on your age at the time that you're making the request. Like, I just want a mini version of me who's a little younger and earlier in their career who can take on a bunch of this stuff that I don't have time for. And the irony to me, I mean, particularly when this crops up in the context of most advisory firm business owners, I'm like, so let me get this straight. You have this problem because you run your own firm and can't work for anyone else. And you want to hire a person just like you who's going to want to work for you? Like you wouldn't want to work for you. Why would mini you want to work for you? And like you just said, you don't like doing these things. Why would mini you like them any more than you? You don't like them. That's why you're trying to hire someone. And I find a lot of us have this tendency to try to hire mini me just at an earlier stage of career where it's quote okay to delegate some things to them that you don't want to do in your senior position, when most of the time the first hire isn't mini you, it's like it's bizarro you, it's opposite you. It's someone that does all the things that you don't like, that likes all the things you don't like, which probably also means they hate the things that you do like, right? As your person highlight, like you had a getting stuff done person and you started brainstorming with them and stressed the heck out of them because they don't find brainstorming fun. They find getting things done and checking off boxes fun. And brainstorming was not their happy space, but it's your happy space. So if you hired a brainstorming partner, you'd both think a lot and nothing would get done. Instead, you hire a getting things done person, but then you have to be cognizant not to brainstorm with them. Like brainstorm yourself, think of the things you want at the end of the brainstorming, and then give them a list of things to do. Or find a
Yeah.
brainstorming buddy that's not them and brainstorm with them, and then come back with the list of things to do. So I mean, it gets to your point, Carl, like getting really clear about the kind of person that you really need in the role, which if you haven't done it before might mean, you know, working with consultants or even just bouncing a job description off of an advisor friend. Just say like, does this sound like a person or a unicorn? Right? Because like I want them to be really good at all the details and really good at all the follow through, but also really adaptable to not have to follow the system when we don't need the system. And I need them to always ask questions if I might have forgotten something, but then not ask questions when I don't want them to ask questions because I just want them to do the thing that I want them to do. It's like you can't have someone who leads with all those things at the same time.
Yeah.
Like we're only so human here.
Yeah.
So like tools like Colby to me are great around this because they, you know, evaluate people on a couple of dimensions and you literally can't be good at all the things at once. So it
Yeah.
forces you to get clearer about what you need help with. Working Genius from Patrick Lencioni is another one that I become a super fan of in our hiring process because it essentially kind of evaluates people on 6 stages of how work gets done, from like the ideation people to the get it done across the finish line people at the end. And what they found in their framework, like there's 6 steps, there's 6 layers to the process, and most people are only ever good at 2, and they tend to get really frustrated by 2.
What are you good at? Which
You
two are
have
you?
to pick which ones they're going to like. If you're going to make a job description going, you have to pick which 2 they're going to be good at, and it forces you to pick 2 that they're going to be bad at, or at least that they aren't going to enjoy as much. And I find like it helps force clarity that I can't actually go for a unicorn who does everything magically that I want at once, but I can find a particular person that does a particular set of things and brings a particular skill set well, and then leverage that to the extent possible. Right? Like I'm going to hire a getting things done person. I'm not going to make him my brainstorming partner.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super important. So in terms of delegating, what we've covered just as we wrap up here
Yeah.
is the idea, the story that we all tell ourselves in our heads, because indeed it would make you a bad person. If you were making a list of stuff that you hate to do and you knew everybody else hated to do it and you would welcome them to the
Do it
company and say, go
anyways
do it.
because you have the money and the power.
Yeah, yeah. But that's just a story. Turns out just about everything that you do not like to do in the professional setting, there is somebody who loves it. And by the way, is probably way better at it than you because they love it.
And may also hate the things that you do. Like it goes
That's exactly right.
goes both ways.
In fact, most likely there are things that you love to do that they just really dislike. And then the second thing is just beware of mini me, because that seems to be the easiest thing. Like you kind of want to, you think that you want to hang out with people like you. And so therefore you should hire people like you. And it's just terrible. It never works. Never works because they don't want to do, I mean, yeah,
Well, the reason you work for yourself and no one else. So
exactly.
why do you think mini you is going to be any different in that regard?
For sure. For sure. Well, there's a lot more to talk about, but I think that's a good place.
Yep.
Well, actually, let me just ask you one last question. Is there anything else you think really that's worth talking about in terms of why we don't delegate? And we're not talking about the tactical piece of how to, but why you don't. Is there anything
Well,
else?
I mean, I think we touched on it lightly. The other one that I see come up so often is some version of just no one can do it as well as I can.
Oh, right.
It's just
Right.
faster for me to do it myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that to me, the way I've been thinking about that, because I really struggle with that one. And it's not that I think it's not that I think nobody could do it as well as me. It's the second part. It's just faster to do it myself than to like try and find somebody. And I've had this conversation with yeah, an author that we everyone listening would know, and speaks 50 times a year, has a crazy high speaking fee, books all his own travel, right?
Oh, stop
sends
that.
sends all his own sends all his own contracts, replies to his own email, doesn't have anybody that works for him, nobody, has a great book agent but nobody else. And when I asked him about it, it's 100% like, I just find it, he's like, well, I don't understand, it takes me an hour a month, I do it every Thursday, every third Thursday at noon or something. I go in, take care of all my travel. He's like, I don't understand. And that works for him because that's all he really wants to do. You know, like he doesn't have anything else
He
that he
doesn't have any
wants to
other
do.
pressure on his time or other additional like things he's trying to do to grow the business or put his time elsewhere. Like, okay.
Yeah. But and so every once in a while, I'm like, I feel a little guilty when I'm trying to get rid of things because I'm like, well, so-and-so does it and so-and-so does it. Then I realized, well, in fact, I did this a couple weeks ago. I was like, oh, I'll just do it. And somebody else on the team said to me, yeah, if you do that, you're right, you'll get it done faster now, but we won't be building the flywheel for the future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the idea that like, yeah, it's true. You probably could just do it faster now, but that time and that money that you would spend to get it handed off correctly, even if it takes multiple times, which it will,
Yep.
takes multiple times to get to the point where it's done the way you want it done. That's an investment, right? Not an expense.
Yeah, I mean, I just hear yes, a lot of the it's just faster for me to do it. I mean, look, if it's really a thing you do rarely, okay. But when it's something that you do repeating on an ongoing basis, the stuff just adds up. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember, I mean, sitting down for a version of that as well, where it's like, it's not that bad. It takes me an hour a week. I was like, hour weeks, 50 weeks a year. It's a freaking week of vacation that I'm spending doing a thing that's just a billing process I could hand to someone. And that was pretty much the end of me me doing it, contracting agreements, invoicing, and billing. It's like an hour a week didn't seem like a big deal, but delegate to an administrative support person for an extra week of vacation suddenly sounded a lot better because that's what it adds up to really, really quickly if it's something that you do repeatably, which from my end, like I didn't have any time to train and had no system and process either. I just started turning on screen shares and just
Hmm.
narrated what I'm doing. Like, okay, I'm doing the agreements process. So here's me navigating to the folder, see where it is. Here's me opening the template of the document. So I grab the document and I type save as, and then like I always put the name of the client and then the agreement and then the date of it, and I hit save. Then here's the places in the document that I edit because I'm just literally saying it out loud while I'm doing it on the screen. And then I just do it, in the same time it takes me to do it myself anyways. But at the end, I have a narrated training video that I hand to someone else, and I don't have to do it anymore because now they've got an exact
Right.
walkthrough of exactly how they do it, of how I do it, and they can ask me questions if they get stuck. And I mean that was where it started, and what I found and realized over time was that the overwhelming majority of scenarios where I got frustrated because someone did not do it the way that I wanted it to be done, the dirty truth was because I did a crappy job of actually explaining my expectations. And I had to get better at really articulating, here are the things I care about. Here are the things that are important. Here's the other part of how you do this that's really important that I need you to pay attention to as well. And
Mm.
the more I practice just being super clear and explicit that I need it to be done this way, then it got a lot easier and it got done that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, right, like we were talking about earlier, that there are people, and in the Colby world, we'd be talking about a little bit of red, and I'm way oversimplifying. So those of you who are like Colby geniuses, please don't send me any emails. I know. But in the Colby world, this idea of fact find,
Mhm.
there are people who could then take that same screen share and go, I wonder if could we tweak that a little bit and work with the executor, blue person, that just
Yep.
gets things done, and say, you know what, I think we could improve that a little bit. And I found we find ourselves saying that a lot, like, hey, this is the way we do it now. Please just do it. But if you see things that you think could improve here, like let's talk about them.
Yep.
And so then we get back to your this concern you brought up right here at the end, which is it turns out that things actually can get done as well as you if you do a good job explaining it and getting those expectations out of your head. Like I
Yep.
expected drinks. Well, how was I to know that? Well, it might be common sense to you, but it's not common sense to the person going to get the
Like,
drinks.
yep. It's like be aggravated you don't have drinks, take a deep breath, and then say, okay, I guess we need to ask for drinks to the
Yeah.
checklist.
Turns out you didn't ask. So own how am I
Yeah.
complicit in the results I'm getting? Even if it seems ridiculous to you,
Well,
it's
because
still
again,
much more
what's
helpful.
natural to you is not natural to other people. That's why they like things that you don't like, and you don't like things that they like. Like it fits that way because they don't think about it exactly the way you do. Like that's the point.
Totally. So good. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it.
Cheers.